Welcome back to Digi Bros, everybody.
What's up?
Nick, want to talk about something
How's it hanging?
sad and depressing?
Okay. Do
you?
Go ahead. This is the... What the fuck are you talking about?
You sound so distraught.
I'm just like, what's sad and depressing?
I was thinking earlier about, like, why there aren't more people who aren't, like, white guys making art. And I realize it's because it's expensive.
True.
Because I was thinking, what got me on the subject was I was thinking about,
art, perhaps.
I was thinking about Wes Anderson, right?
Yeah.
And like, having the thought about him reminded me of this tweet that, like, really stuck out to me from a few months ago by Every Frame a Painting, where he was saying how there was 10 directors that he named, and he said, I'm sick of hearing about these 10 directors because everyone talks about them. Yes. Everyone analyzes their work. Everyone goes on about them. He had even covered 3 of them. But he was like, you know, I'm sick of these same 10 old white dudes getting blogged about all the time, so I'm going to try to talk about more diverse directors and stuff like that. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, you know, like, the reason that people don't, like, it wouldn't make any sense for there to, like, not be more, like, diverse crowds of people making art unless there's a reason other, like, it's not just because, oh, everyone wants to see white people, oh, everyone wants ethnocentric media. It's because white people are the ones making the shit. Yeah. And the reason white people are making the shit, there must be because other people can't, you know? And I was thinking, like, film is kind of a rich guy's medium. You know, you've worked with film equipment.
No.
You don't think so?
It's not like Michael Bay owns his own fucking camera. It's not a rich guy's medium.
How did Michael Bay get to be a director?
It's a studio's medium. He shot music videos.
And how did he get the opportunity to shoot music videos?
Because he already had connections in Hollywood. And
why did he have connections in Hollywood?
It's... You made it sound like you have to be rich and white to afford all the equipment to make a video or something.
Not what I said. I said you have to be rich and white to do film.
I guess.
Now, how do you even know how expensive film equipment is? How do you know that?
By going on Amazon and looking at it.
You're in film school. You're a film student. You wouldn't know what to look for on Amazon if it weren't for the fact that you went to a class where you used that equipment. Yeah. Then you went online and you looked up how much it cost, and it was all prohibitively, insanely expensive. Yeah. How did you afford to get into arts, a film school? Because your dad is a rich white guy.
That's not fair because I'm one of the only white people in any of my classes.
Really?
Yes, most of my classes are very diverse, and I love that.
Well, you still live in a rich city.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like...
Well, most people... I mean, ODU's in Norfolk.
That's true.
Most of the students are from Norfolk, and most of them are poor and getting by on working and...
How many of them are any good?
No, they're not good, but that's just natural talent. I mean, there's one guy who's I think he's a kind of mixed black guy from DC, and he's got a kid, and he's my age with the kid, and like struggling like hell to get by, and you know, doing film, and he's talented. Well, I don't know if using me was a good example with my. Well, like, I don't know where you're going now.
I wasn't even talking about Americans, because the fact that these people are Americans already puts them into a different boat from what I really mean, which is like people from other countries, people from other backgrounds that are less like. Yeah. If you don't have some degree of money, it's gonna be really fucking hard to get into film. Yeah. If you don't live in a town that has film,
it's really where you are that makes the biggest difference, because America just happens to be the biggest market for it.
Right.
With China growing, but it's
but
like...
why are we the biggest market for it?
Well, that's because we have
money to do it.
Yeah, we have a good economy, and the entertainment industry is a big part of American lifestyle.
That, like, you can't just, like, people can't just make art out of nowhere. Yes. You have to be educated in order to even understand. Like, if you want to be a writer, you have to be able to read. If you want to be able to read, you had to go to school, you know? A lot of places in the world, not everyone goes to school, not everyone knows how to read. So why aren't there people writing about those guys' scenarios? Because they literally can't write. They don't know how, you know? So, like, the stories that we get tend to be limited to either people who can write or people who transcribe for people who can't write, you know? You're not going to read a novel by a guy who literally cannot write unless he orally told it to someone who can, and even then he probably had to pay for that, you know? Like, unless that person is like some philanthropist who went out of his way to find someone, you know, in like the third world who can't read and wanted to share their story, you know? Like, so the diversity of stories that we can get is inherently limited to how many people can tell that story. And the more expensive the medium you're talking about, the fewer people we're going to have who can talk about it. And so, like, TV shows are the most famously, like, ethnocentric thing there is, where it's all white people. You know, like, unless it's an HBO show. When you watch a show like Friends, or, like, you know, or even Seinfeld, like,
because it's written by white Jews, so of course it's mostly...
And all the characters on it are white people, you know, like... So you end up with this, like, ethnocentric cast. And then, like, those shows also will have, like, maybe the one girl on the cast just because they wanted to have a girl on the cast, and everyone else is, like, the guys who wrote the show kind of thing, you know? You get a lot of that. And, like, it's because making TV shows is just so hard to do anywhere else other than where it's being done, you know?
Yeah.
And then even the stuff that is being made in other places doesn't get circulated, either because it's not that good, or because, especially in the English-speaking world, or at least in America, we don't tend to watch anything that's not in English.
Yes.
You know? Which I've always found to be, like, the most fascinating thing is how, like, everywhere else watches American entertainment, but America doesn't watch entertainment from anywhere else.
Yes.
Like, maybe Britain and Japan. Like, that's it, you know? Like, when was the last time you saw a show that came from somewhere that wasn't America, England, or Japan? Can you think of anything?
I mean, there's lots of Korean shows.
Have you watched a Korean show?
I haven't watched any, but they exist.
I said you. When was the last time you watched anything that wasn't made in America, Britain, or Japan?
I don't remember. I think I've seen...
I've never seen.
I mean, I've seen a lot of Korean movies.
I've seen some Korean films. Yeah. Those are getting bigger over the last 5 years. They've, you know, sort of becoming the next Japan, if not bigger. But, like, you know, it's funny because India has a huge cinema market, like the Bollywood.
I mean, there's also cultural differences why we wouldn't be into that. Kind of like
yeah, but we also just don't watch it.
I watched a documentary on making the Russian version of Everybody Loves Raymond, and it's like they had it's the same premise of the show, but they had to change a lot because it's just cultural differences where it's like in Russia, you know, the wife has to act a different way because that's just like the way she acts as an American wife would just not be acceptable in Russia, and so they have to change certain things. So I'm sure like there are good shows that would just not translate well, you know.
There's definitely shows that get readapted in multiple places.
Yeah.
But, like, what I'm talking about is that almost everywhere else does watch American media.
Yeah.
Like, just straight up American, you know? Or listen to American music, especially with music. American music and British music are influential around the world.
Yes.
But world music is not influential to us, you know? Like, if you listen to Japanese bands, like, almost all of them are influenced by some kind of American band, you know, or British band, like, and then, like, for instance, Shinsei Kamate-chan, their influences are Sex Pistols and
I feel like you're
Beatles,
getting away from your original thesis, though, because are you saying now that music is all because the Beatles were more privileged or something? Like, what are you...
No, this is a different point.
This is a weird
We're on a
point.
completely different point.
I just don't understand where you're going at all.
I just think it's... this is now more interesting to me, so I'm talking about this
guess.
instead.
You've changed...
My point... I will get back to where I was, okay? You leave it to me. I know how to manage my conversation topic. I'm more interested now in this topic because I've thought about it a lot over time. How it's always fascinated me that, to me, what I'm gonna get to is that the reason Japanese bands put out so much music is because they have a smaller audience.
Yes.
Because Japanese bands tend to put out an album every fucking year, at minimum. Because the only people who listen to Japanese music are Japanese people. It doesn't get sold. Like, a lot of Americans will say, well, I listen to a lot of Japanese bands because, like, anime fans
Yeah, but
and
we don't
shit.
buy it.
Yeah, they don't sell it here,
supporting it.
you know? And, like, if you listen to Shinsei Kamate-chan, their first song that made them famous, Rock and Roll, like, won't stop ringing through my ears or whatever. He sings about listening to the Beatles and the Sex Pistols and getting into rock and roll.
Yes.
No one in America, except for me, is getting into rock and roll because of Shinsei Kamate-chan.
Yeah,
you know?
But I mean, they're getting into it because we introduced them to that culture, whereas we already had that culture.
Right.
So, like...
But do you not think it's interesting that American and British bands are famous all around the world, and bands from all around the world are not famous here?
Well, it's just because we were famous first.
It's because we don't listen to music that's not in our language. No one in America wants to listen to other language music. It doesn't happen.
Well, except for if me and you know, we're listening to Japanese music at 13 and 14.
That means we're Generation 1.
If we had made a band, yeah, I mean, we would be the new influence. Like, it's not like this has been happening for 500 fucking years. Like, you gotta give them some time. Like, I'm sure eventually Japanese music will start to have more influence in places or something,
yeah,
you know?
maybe.
Like, I'm sure Boris, there might be some bands that are pretty influenced by Boris.
Maybe.
I could see American bands being influenced by Boris.
Boris is more famous in America than they are in Japan.
There you go.
Because they're signed to an American... I don't know. No, they're not. But, like, a lot of those bands that are from Japan that are more popular around the world are not signed to Japanese labels. They're signed to, like, American labels and shit. Like, Guitar Wolf are signed to an American label. But, like... Yeah, like most Japanese bands put out an album every year because the only people who listen to it are Japanese people.
Yes.
Whereas an American band can expect to be listened to everywhere in the world because everywhere is used to listening to English music, you know?
Yeah.
And I think there's something...
And there's just more people in America, like, even if they don't go overseas. Compared to Japan.
Japan, sure, but what about everywhere else in the world? You ever heard an American listen to Chinese music? Have you ever heard Chinese music?
Wait,
they
that's
got
not
2 billion people.
I was just saying an American can put out less albums just because there's enough people in America to sustain them.
But they also get fans all around the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
What band do you know that doesn't have world tours, you know? You listen to Mastodon. Didn't they just do like a Europe tour and like a world tour? You know, a band from fucking Georgia doing world tours. And if you got a band from Japan... They might play a show in LA if they're extremely famous, like Baby Metal or something, you know? Like, or one show in fucking London.
Motherfucker.
They're not doing world tours. But yeah, anyway, my point is, influence from, like, the influence and, like, ability to have widespread recognition of old white people, or just even any white people, especially white guys in particular, is more broad. There's more white people making shit for white people, and therefore those white people get inspired to make shit. And they're more capable of making shit because they have more money and they come from better places.
Yeah.
So it's an endless cycle of white people influencing white people to make things, and white people being able to make things.
And I feel like it's... Instead of white people, you should really say the majority. Because if the majority were someone else...
We're not the majority. I mean, in America, maybe.
That's what I'm saying. And
we're not the majority in the world.
Well, among music, I suppose. If all the famous musicians are white people, then we're the majority of great musicians, I suppose.
What?
I'm
said, I suppose
confused.
Twice. I don't know
dude,
what the fuck you're saying.
I hate this conversation. I really do.
You sound like
this
that guy
in
fucking the Eric Andre show. He's all like,
so stupid.
basically, fundamentally.
Basically.
I feel like you just don't understand the point I'm getting at, or something.
I don't. It's incredibly pointless to me.
Okay.
Like, I get it. I'm just like, why? Why are you talking about this?
Because it's fascinating. Because it upsets me when I'm sitting there thinking, like, why don't I see more? The thing that bothers me the most is when it's analysis videos, because that's what I do. There are no women making analysis videos. I've talked about this before. No women are doing it. And the reason no women are doing it is because of the circumstances of why someone does an analysis video.
Yes.
The kind of people who do it tend to be guys, because guys are like taught to constantly talk about our opinions.
Yes.
And we're taught to be funny.
Wait, how does this analysis video have anything to do with the... Alright, whatever. Alright, keep going.
It's all the same!
It's all the same,
art
yes.
is exactly the same! So, we're taught to act a certain way, to talk about our thoughts, to talk about our feelings, and women are often taught to do the opposite. They're taught to not talk about themselves, to not be funny, because they're just supposed to be women. They're not supposed to be anything. You know, a lot of women are taught that way. And so... guys are more likely to do analysis videos, and then because of the fact that the ones doing it are guys who are mostly influencing other guys, then it's a perpetual cycle of more guys doing it.
Yes.
Because not that many girls are even watching analysis videos, because they're all from the perspective of guys who relate to other guys. So, you know, someone who I follow, who might be a guy writing from a very guy perspective, I go, oh, I get that, because I'm also a guy. I want to write like this too.
Yes.
And then I write about it, you know? But then there's no one influencing more girls to write.
I think the part of your discussion that's hurting my brain is that it's like everything you're saying, I agree with, it is true, but you're like approaching such an incredibly broad, like vast topic.
Yes.
And then like I thought you were making a specific point at first.
No.
And I didn't realize you were just talking about everything in the world, like all
I'm
at once.
I'm talking about everything.
Yes, you're talking about fucking everything.
That was my intention from the
start.
start.
Yes, this is all true. But
So,
it relates to everything else in a very broad way.
So, the thing is, when I think about, like, why isn't there, like, a Chinese woman making analysis videos?
Yes.
Then I have to break it down, like, okay, well, first of all, the culture of China might not lead to analysis videos. Second of all, the culture of America might not lead even women to making analysis videos. Like, all the culture surrounding the idea of analysis video tends to be tied to American or British or English-speaking men, you know? It's rarely women. There's an ethnic diversity to some extent. It's mostly white guys, but I know some black dudes who analyze stuff like fucking Satchbag or fucking there's one of the dudes from Critical Hit, my old friend what's fucking Misfortune Dogged, and Neil X, who's a brown guy.
Yeah.
You know, but it's almost all guys, and this ties into everything else. And the most this is like, this story has always like struck me, because when we were doing Elements of Brony episode 3, we had Clover Keane, who was the only like really like there was only like 2 girls doing My Little Pony analysis who were truly great. It was Clover Keane and Rookie Wampus for her first few videos. And that's the thing, My Little Pony actually did have more women doing analysis than any other category of thing I've ever seen, because My Little Pony's actually a girls show. And, you know, and I guess, like, it was, girls ended up feeling more comfortable doing shit with it. But anyways, Clover Keane came on this show, and she was telling a story about how growing up she wanted to be an actress. But, like, she was saying how, like, people don't want you to do that if you're a girl.
Yeah.
She was like, everyone wanted me to be pretty. They wanted me to get married. They wanted me to be a girl. And she was like, when I was trying to audition for roles, you can't get a leading role as a girl. You always play the girl.
Yes.
Like, every role for women is the girl character, you know, in, like, especially because, you know, she's trying to do, like, classical plays and stuff like that. It's like, women just weren't characters in the time when these were written, you know?
That's very true for theater, because you're doing all old shit. So.
Right. So she was like, you can't get any roles. The only roles you can get
even
are
though, like, at
my
high school, they had, you know, lots of gender bending wasn't a big issue. Like, you'd see girls playing guys all the time.
Well, she lived in Hungary, and
okay.
that could be part of it. But she was
it's
like...
always been a Shakespeare thing to gender bend, but that's usually guys playing girls.
Right. She was like, you know, they would never have roles for women, and when they did, you weren't really doing anything. You were just the girl. You just were supposed to look pretty, you know?
Yeah.
And she was like, she was saying how she was never expected to be like funny or to be like interesting and stuff. She was just expected to be a girl, and so she ended up giving up on theater because it kind of just crushed her dreams.
Yeah.
And she became a lawyer.
Wow.
And so like, yeah.
What's a twist?
And so like when I was hearing that story, I was just like, this is exactly what people are talking about when they say, like, you know, why women feel like they can't get into to like the arts and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And people always say like the patriarchy, which is such a weird broad term that sounds like it's trying to blame men for the problem. But it's not that men are the problem, it's that society isn't inspiring women enough. You know, it's that men have made things in the past and therefore they continue to make things in the future because they're the ones who are influential, they're the ones who are, you know.
Yeah. It's just like society as a whole. It's like
right.
Yeah, not
the enemy
the words,
you're fighting
yeah.
covers all society. Damn right. Mama's not here gonna fight all night, as they said in the Persona 3 soundtrack. But yeah, like, so when she told that story, I was always thinking that I talked about this kind of when I talked about the Cool Girl Games videos, where like the whole concept there was like that if I made videos talking about games that I thought girls would be into, and they played those games, and that would mean more girls would be influenced by video games and want to make video games, and then eventually maybe analyze video games. And then I'd get to watch female analysts of video games, which is all I want. I just want people who aren't guys, and especially aren't white guys, to analyze games. And I'd love to have people like, for instance, Neil X, I've been begging him forever to do Buddhist analysis, because he's a hardcore Buddhist, and he always has a Buddhist perspective on the shit he watches. Like, he would tell me about My Little Pony episodes and be like, oh man, this episode had this great Buddhist message, and I was like, do a video about it. And he's like, well, I feel like it'll be controversial because it's, you know, a different
That's
from
why
the
it'll be
normal
fun
belief system. And I was like, yeah, exactly. People need to hear this. Like, people need to hear why a Buddhist appreciates this show, you know. Like, I've been begging him forever to do it. I want him to do, like, he's talked about doing like Rurouni Kenshin analysis and stuff.
Different
like,
perspectives would be great, because we just get the same fucking white male perspective on everything, and it's like, who gives a shit? If you have something about your life that makes it different and more interesting, then it's always way cool to me.
Yeah, especially something
I get that a lot talking to Hope, where she'll have this fucking totally different, you know, feeling about something. I'm like, that's, you know, we grew up completely differently. It's amazing.
And like, the thing is, it's gonna be a while before it'll be great, you know. And like, a lot of people will say, well, you just want people to have like to have gimmicky analysis, you know. And I'm like, it will come off that way sometimes, because, you know, it's new. When something's new, it's often not as good. Like, if someone writes from, like, specifically from the perspective of like, well, this is what it's like to be a girl watching anime, you know, and then like isn't necessarily a great writer, then it'll just be like, well, it sounds like a gimmick, you know, that you're the girl who watches anime or something. But if you write about it, like, and the writing is solid, and you are bringing up these perspective things that just happen to be because you're a woman, that just happens to be why you have that perspective, you know, instead of making it a gimmick, it'll be super cool, you know? So, I think it'll happen eventually. I'm waiting for the day I see some analysis that, like, I want to see more women writing about everything, and they're not afraid to bring up stuff that they feel that way because they're a woman, you know, where people say, oh, you're biased, and it's like, yeah, I want the bias. Give me the bias.
Yes.
Reviews are supposed to be biased. That's what makes them interesting.
Yeah. An
unbiased review is the most boring sack of shit you could ever write. If you don't believe me, go read Jim Sterling's unbiased review of Final Fantasy 13. It's the best thing ever. It's where he was like, he wrote a completely 100% objective review, and it's literally just him describing the game. Like, you know, not making any value judgments about anything, just describe, like, this game has controls. You press buttons and things happen. Like, this is objectively true. So, yeah. I guess I took a very long road to get to a destination
Yeah.
that maybe made sense once I got there.
The original point. I feel like, yeah, like you were trying to get to this, but you took a really weird way to get there. That was a little confusing.
Well, I guess it was sort of a Jesse Wood moment. Where I had it more realized in my head than what was apparent to the rest of the world. Next time on Digi Bros, we'll talk about something else.
Sweet.